Last story we wanted to get to here before our monologues is potential threat to the First Amendment that I think is really important to break down. So you all might have been following this story. This has been unfolding for a number of months. Somehow, and we'll get into that a little bit more in a moment, Project Veritas got their hands on what appears to legitimately have been Ashley Biden, the daughter of the president's diary. In it, she journals about her recovery from addiction and whatever else is going on in her life. They get their hands on this, and then we know, and I think we talked about it before, the FBI does this raid on James O'Keefe's home to seize evidence and is sort of insinuating that they directly stole this diary. We're getting more details on both sides about how they obtained this diary, and then also the incredibly sketchy and I would say outright abusive practices that the government has been using to go after Project Veritas, an organization that, look, let's be clear, guys, I have no particular use for. I think every time they post something, Saagar and I are very skeptical of whatever it is because they've been known to deceptively edit. Their tactics are as sketchy as it possibly gets. But those are the instances when it's most important that you stick to your principle, even when you don't necessarily like the outlet that you are talking about. So first we have this New York Times reporting. And by the way, Project Veritas is in this whole feud with the New York Times, so you should take their reporting with a grain of salt. But the story that they sketch out here in terms of how Project Veritas obtains Ashley Biden's diary is that she had been staying in a Florida apartment. She'd been living there for a while. She moves out of the apartment and she leaves, mistakenly, the diary and some of her other personal effects behind. According to the New York Times, she contacted the landlords of the apartment. She planned to go back and get it. The new tenant of the apartment was a Trump supporter who found this diary, and it ends up in the hands of people who are circulating it at a Trump fundraiser. That's when Project Veritas comes in and, is talking to these intermediaries and wants to purchase this diary for $40,000. New York Times sets this whole article up with the way, the sort of subterfuge that they allege Project Veritas used to confirm the authenticity of the diary. Okay, so diary is left at this apartment, basically stolen by the next tenant. And then it ends up being purchased by Project Veritas for $40,000. They review the contents of the diary. They actually try to use it as a device to get Biden to sit with them for an interview to answer questions about it. They're like, no, we're not doing this. This is extortionate, piss off, basically. And they don't end up even publishing the contents of the diary because they rightly figure out that most people are going to look at that and be like, what? It's the president's daughter. Like, what are you doing? Right. These private details of her life? This is way out of bounds. So they don't publish the contents of the diary. They ultimately turn it over to local law enforcement. And then the next thing that we hear, we didn't really know any of that was going on. The first we hear of this story is because there's this FBI raid on James O'Keefe, who's the founder of Project Veritas, the leader of Project Veritas, on his home. He just released some video of what that looked like. Let's take a look.
My hands are I'm saying you're within your right to. So the only thing for our safety and for yours, we're going to have an agent sit with you.
Yeah.
You do not have to speak to them. You are not being detained for safety. We're supposed to see. Physical theater here. Commissioner, are you comfortable on that?
Yeah, I'm fine.
So there's another team coming up? So maybe we'll split up into like areas of the house.
So very aggressive here. And now the latest piece, Saagar, and then I'll get your reaction. Let's go ahead and put this screenshot up there on the screen. This tear sheet. Project Veritas says the DOJ secretly accessed its emails as part of its probe into how it got Joe Biden's daughter's diary. Effectively, the court had established a certain procedure because you are talking about a First Amendment organization here where there'd be a special master that reviews any information and determines what can be used in a court case and not, and that the DOJ secretly went around those rules to execute a search warrant directly with Microsoft and obtain these emails outside of the court-established process. That is what Project Veritas and their lawyers are alleging here. So that was all long, and let me just boil down a couple of things. Number one, you cannot, obviously, as a First Amendment organization or anyone, directly steal something. That is illegal, right? That is theft. But even the New York Times, that has an axe to grind here, isn't saying that that's what happened. Now, they allege, maybe they knew that it was stolen materials. Well, guess what? Journalists know that they're using stolen materials all the time. Is it unseemly to pay $40,000 to pay any money for information and access? Yeah, it's unseemly. It's also not illegal. It's considered sort of bad journalistic practice, and it is unseemly, but it is not illegal. So even in the story that the New York Times is spinning here, it's hard to see outside of political motivation what is the justification for the criminalizing of these activities.
Unless, Krystal, they can prove that Project Veritas directly organized the theft of these materials and orchestrated it directly, not purchasing it after it had already been stolen, then this is a BS political persecution. If you look and you read within the story, they say, as one of their accusations for why Project Veritas shouldn't be treated with First Amendment protections, is that they contacted a representative for Ashley Biden and didn't identify themselves as part of Project Veritas. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't do that. At the same time, that's not illegal. Like, it's not illegal for you to use false or deceptive tactics in order to get information. And in fact, there have been many instances when reporters have either not identified themselves or inserted themselves into a situation without identifying themselves and have used information around them in order to publish stories. Once again, I would personally never do that. It doesn't fit within my ethics, but I am a First Amendment maximalist. And in this case, they did not do anything wrong. I also find it very troubling whenever I read all of this, that the New York Times is just willing to take these criminal prosecution documents straight from the Department of Justice and just establish their narrative. Look, we're talking here about the President of the United States' Justice Department, who is prosecuting somebody who tried to publish the contents of his daughter's diary. I think that's sketchy territory. I'm glad that they didn't ultimately go ahead and publish it. But even if they did, I would say, look, it's a free country. This is the price of what living in a free country is. And you cannot use the FBI and the DOJ and the goon squad to bust down people's doors at 6 a.m. in the morning, steal all of their materials, and then start leaking it to the New York Times. I mean, this is the part which really bugs me about the mainstream media, which is we have to recognize this for what it is. I mean, is it all that different than New York Times reporters meeting Daniel Ellsberg, who literally stole and orchestrated a theft from the Pentagon, of the Pentagon Papers, and then transferred them to Neil Sheehan over at the Times? I mean, that could have similarly been prosecuted as some sort of criminal conspiracy and directing of all of this happening, or same thing, whenever the Washington Post and them also tried to obtain those materials. We have to protect that right. This fits with Julian Assange. This fits here with Veritas. And this is why it's just so frustrating that these people don't really believe in freedom of the press. And whenever it's somebody using tactics that they don't agree with, or who is an enemy of the, the regime, quote unquote, they're fine. And like last thing on Veritas, look, they've been caught with sketchy edits. I personally wish James O'Keefe would just publish the interviews and not do those annoying straight to camera monologues, because they actually just ruin
the weird
his product.
Music they lay over top and stuff. It's like, just put on the info, dude.
Project Veritas, if you're listening, stop doing it. But we have used some of their stuff before. The New York Times reporter, the Jeffrey Epstein, Amy Robach. I mean, the guy has published some legit stuff in the past. And I'm just going to err on the side of being able to have that in the open and public square. So I think all of us should stand up against this.
I 100% agree. And it's really simple. Your principles are meaningless if they don't apply when it's people or ideas or organizations that you don't particularly care for. And that's what we see is New York Times, all these people, they're so, they'll use all this high-minded rhetoric about freedom of the press and the power of journalism, how important it is and how you got to protect it. No, we have to resist, Trump and his attacks on the press and all of this. But they only do it when it's easy. They only do it when it fits into, when it's one of their friends fits into an ideology that's comfortable for them. So they are actively not just silent on this, but they're actively trying to sow this narrative that there was something actively illegal about what was done here. When you read through their own accounting, you can't figure out, okay, well, what is actually breaking the law? Not what is distasteful, not what is unseemly, but what is actually illegal to justify criminalizing this activity and an FBI raid, knocking on James O'Keefe's door. And even in their telling, there's nothing there that crosses that line. So that's why this story ultimately matters.
Hey guys, we're gonna be totally upfront with you. This is the most perilous time that we have ever operated in.
It is so difficult just to try to sort through the news, but even more importantly, to bring you accurate information as this wave of lockdown and censorship spreads across the nation.
Yeah, look, if you can become a premium subscriber today at breakingpoints.com, you're gonna help us build out a vibrant, independent media ecosystem which is free of mainstream pressure. We can't tell you how important that is at a time like this.
Yep, that's right. Go to breakingpoints.com to subscribe. We love you guys and we appreciate you so much.